Hello and welcome to the latest Soul Leadership Tribe podcast, and thank you ever so much for tuning in. So today I have another incredible guest. These amazing guests just keep arriving, and it's a lady called Elisabeth Hancock, and I was introduced to Elisabeth through Bubu Garcia, who was somebody I interviewed very recently. Please do go and check out that episode as well, because it was such a wonderful conversation about his story. But when we finished, Bubu said to me, "Oh, you've got to have a conversation with Elisabeth," which because he'd just interviewed her on his own channel, and I checked out the episode that he'd done with her, and I just thought, "Wow, he's so right. I have got to get Elisabeth in front of the Soul Leadership Tribe audience." So the conversation, it was just one of those ones where an hour went by and you just think, what? We barely got started. So I will definitely be inviting Elisabeth back for future conversations. She has a book out called Work Your Energy, which we talked about a little bit during the conversation, and is just about to launch a second book. So when that's published and ready to go, and I've had the opportunity to read through the final version, I will definitely be inviting her back to have a conversation about that, which, you know, when you find out what the subject area is about, it's incredible. So let me just share Elisabeth's bio with you. She's a researcher and author of books around the science of spirituality, metaphysics, and consciousness, which is something we talk about a lot in this episode. Elisabeth is a truth seeker at heart, and she dedicates her time to researching, writing, and speaking about the true nature of reality, lost history, the secret societies, and our star ancestry, as well as teaching individuals how to access more of their innate intuitive abilities and manage their energy so they can live a better life. And that's something we go into a lot in the conversation you're about to hear. Elisabeth's mission is to help awaken humanity to the truth of who we are, whilst being part of the disclosure that is taking place right now. And what disclosure means is extraterrestrial ancestry, yes, for real, the corruption of the so-called elites that rule this world, and the ancient advanced civilizations that lived before modern day humanity. Yes, you heard me right again. There have been ancient civilizations and extraterrestrial civilizations that have been here long before modern day humanity. So Elisabeth releases regular content through her books, podcasts, interviews, and blogs, and is also a guest writer for medium.com. So yeah, I won't say any more. Listen to the conversation. It truly is wonderful. And I hope that you get lots and lots of valuable wisdom from that you can take away and actually implement to really live more from the heart. It doesn't matter whether it's in business, it's your personal life, it's relationships, it doesn't matter. So you can live from the heart more and remember just what a magical creative being you really are. So before I finish, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. If you enjoy the episode. As always, it really does help the algorithm get it out to people who would benefit from seeing it. So I will leave it there. Thank you very much for tuning in, and enjoy the conversation. Hello and welcome to the Soul Leadership Tribe podcast, and thank you ever so much for tuning in. As you'll have seen from the guest intro video I've just done, I have the wonderful Elisabeth Hancock with me, who has had an incredible journey and has a really powerful story to share about where she came from, how her life unfolded, and the incredible work that she's doing now. We were first introduced by a mutual friend of ours, the lovely Bubu Garcia, who I've interviewed previously, who you can see if you look at a previous episode. And Elisabeth was interviewed by Bubu as well, which was, again, I highly recommend checking out that episode as well, which is what drew me to invite Elisabeth to come onto the Soul Leadership Tribe podcast. So yeah, it's this is actually take two. We did an episode about a week ago that, for whatever reason, the universe decided it was going to throw a technical glitch at us. So we're here again, and I cannot wait for this conversation to unfold. So Elisabeth, thank you ever so much for joining me again and for joining the Soul Leadership Tribe audience. Really, really appreciate your time. So I wondered if we could sort of take it right from the start, your early life, your journey through childhood into adulthood, and the amazing epiphanies and realizations and reconnections to higher awareness that we all have that led you to do the incredible work that you are doing today. Because I think for many of the people watching, as people will have heard me say before, the real pandemic of the last 4 years isn't the one that many people would think it is, but it's actually been one of control, oppression, and overthinking. But what the thing that happened 4 years ago has really done is it's really woken a lot of people up, and people have looked up and gone, hang on a minute, what's going on in this world? This doesn't make any sense to me at all. And I think that's magical because people like you are doing such wonderful work to really help people to remember who they truly are, which is more than just these human bodies. I mean, as much as these bodies are wonderful, they're a vehicle for our awareness, for our soul essence to experience life in the 3D realm. But anyway, that's enough from me. Welcome, Elisabeth. And if you could start right from the beginning, we'd love that.
Okay, so, like most children, I was a very intuitive child. Of course, society back then, it very much shut children down. It was all about, control and, as you say, oppression. School, of course, was very much around learning. As we now know, a very indoctrinated and selective education. And we were taught not to be our full self, essentially, which is that we have sensory abilities, we have intuitive abilities, and I think most people are waking back up to their intuitive abilities today. But the sensory abilities and the supernatural abilities, these are things that people, I think, are still very scared around, thanks to the Hollywood movie industry and the religious priests who just, went off on one and things. And as we now begin to understand, the religious books are actually history books. And they actually tell us who we were probably hundreds of thousands of years ago. We were a very luminous being. We had access to all of these sensory abilities, and we were far more spiritually aware. And when I use the word spiritual, I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about spiritual in terms of we were much more aware of our multidimensional reality, our multidimensional world. And then something changed, and something came into our world and shut us down, controlled us, suppressed us. And this has really been going on for thousands of years. And we're very lucky to be living in this time period because we're actually coming out of it. But of course, when we went to school, it was still the period where our parents were telling us to not be so silly, to not make up stories. The schools were busy just, indoctrinating us with a whole load of stuff that really, when I look back at the curriculum now, which they're still teaching in some schools, in many schools, in fact, it's just nonsensical. Learning about so many wars in British curriculum, why learn so many wars? But just coming sort of out of that, we all then suppressed ourselves. We wanted to please our parents. We all became people pleasers, all became very easily controlled and led. And, we now sort of come into this more modern day. So like most people, I started waking up probably around 10 years ago. And it was a very interesting time because it was a time when we had just moved overseas. My mother had died. My mother-in-law had died the year before. And I started to hear my mother's voice in my head. And I thought it was just, how you process grief. I just thought it was a normal part of processing grief. You just carry on seeing them and hearing them and everything, and it's just normal. But one day, my sister came to visit, and I asked my mum if she had anything she wanted to pass on, any message she wanted to pass on to my sister. And she gave me this message, which I won't say because it's private, obviously, but it's a very simple, normal message. And I passed it on to my sister, and she just reacted so emotionally from this, and it really, really affected her. And I really began to then wonder, was I actually speaking to my mother? And of course, I now realize that I was. And it's really, when people die, they're really not dead. And it's, again, very hard to explain these things, but we can still connect with them. We live in this multidimensional field where there are beings, entities, spirits, everything at every single level, and also extraterrestrials as well. And they also are part of this multidimensional field. So that really is just filled with life. We are not the only ones living in it. It's just that we don't really understand the true nature of reality. And I don't think we quite grasped the true nature of space either. So, these are things, which I've been exploring for a very, very, very long time for my second book. But just going back to my story. So at that same time, my daughter started to also see things in the house. And this went on for 2 years. And she also was talking about a past life that she had in India. And it was very interesting. I actually made notes. I wrote it down. I put it in my first book, which is this one here, Work Your Energy. And I have a very, very open mind. I always have done. And, I think in order to appreciate and thrive in life, I think we have to have an open mind. As soon as you start judging things, you lower your vibration so much that you're now down in the lower vibrations of that really don't bring you, you need to be in the higher vibrations to have a happier life, basically. So, we've all been suppressed and shut down.
Your daughter,
What do you mean?
your daughter, how old? When she started communicating what you were seeing, how old was she?
This was between the ages of 2 and 4.
Wow.
And yeah, and she had an invisible friend, which actually invisible friend didn't go until age 7. And as I was exploring this for my book, I started to understand more about brainwaves, and it's really all about brainwaves. So children are in the lower brainwaves of theta alpha. These are the brainwaves where they're still connected to the multidimensional field, and so they can still see and hear and and all sorts of things. But when we get to the age of about 7, 8, we start to move out of theta more into alpha. But when we get into the age of 12, 13, we're actually out of even theta and alpha, and then we're into the beta. And the beta brainwaves are the external, so they keep us plugged into the external. And we then obviously get hooked into society and societal conditioning and programming. And that just completely takes us out of these lower brainwaves. And of course, we now understand that the alpha brainwaves are the ones where we need to go in order to de-stress. If we stay in the beta stress brainwaves too much, and I'm talking about the stress beta because there's other beta as well, but if we stay in those too much, then the stress creates too much hormonal imbalance, and this then brings our vibration down. So the fact that we're in this very busy, stressful world is causing us to really lower our vibrations. And, essentially, we are like a sort of a resonance. We're resonating at a certain frequency. We're attracting that frequency to us. So when you're in the higher frequencies, which is, love, compassion, joy, enthusiasm, excitement, we're attracting that to us. When we're in the lower frequencies, which most of us are, our news, it programs us to be scared. Everything is fearful on it. Our schools, it's all around, again, programming fear, guilt, shame. These are the 3 lowest vibrations. And yet how many of us are in guilt, shame, and fear because of this, and then control and all these sorts of things. So we've been stuck in these lower vibrations. But when you start moving up into the higher vibrations, your life really starts to improve. Anyway, back to, so my daughter was seeing all these different entities and beings, and I began starting to talk to them and just find out more about them. And it actually, You actually get words coming back, you get answers to your questions. And whether we're talking to entities and beings, or whether we're talking to different parts of our own mind, different deeper aspects of ourselves, I don't really think matters, because we're all part of this multidimensional field anyway. In a sense, we're all consciousness. Everything is consciousness. And but it's actually very interesting. So we carried on like this, and I just began to explore it. Now, I've always been a curious person. I love learning. I really love learning. I've now gone into full-time researching, but I also teach psychic development to people. And the more I began to explore it, the more I began to realize that we really know nothing about this world. We have not been taught what this world really is. And this first book is very much about working your energy to have a better life. But the second book is much more about true human origins, who we really are, because, we know that we're not evolved apes. And, but if we're not, then who are we? And also looking at our star ancestry as well, because it is my belief that we've actually lived on this planet. There have been civilizations on this planet for millions and millions of years. And we have skeletal remains to prove this. We have ancient artifacts to prove this. So why have humans only been around for 200, 300, 400,000 years? Well, Homo sapien for 200, 300,000 years. Well, we are the latest in a long line of genetically altered. And then that brings us into, the physical body. So what is the physical body compared to the spirit? And this is where we are now. And it's a really exciting time to be exploring all of this, because nobody knows the complete answer. So it's this, this race against time to try and understand all of this. But what we do know is that the indigenous tribes, they've been writing down their stories for tens of thousands of years. And when we look at the indigenous histories, we can actually start to understand more about who we are as a species. And for me, I just love this. I think it's really exciting, because we're bringing, as they say, heaven and earth together, spirit and physical together. And this is what we always were, and it was split. It was split probably a few hundred years ago. I think probably it was actually only split in the 1700s. Although the Romans, of course, 2,000 years ago, they did an awful lot. But in the 1700s, you still have Tartaria. And that's something else that I talk about in my book as well, because that's a very interesting time. Anyway, I realize I've gone off on a massive tangent here.
Oh no, I love it. I love it. It's just so wonderful hearing you explain. Although I was actually looking at some Tartaria stuff the other day, but it's difficult to find the true information, because of course you try and do a search on good old Schmoogle, and a lot of that
Oh, yeah.
information, it just brings you up. It brings you up just tons and tons and tons of debunking. But when you look at some of the photographs of some of the technology that was around for free energy and so on and so on, and you see photographs
Yeah.
of buildings from back then and now, and how the free energy technology has been either just demolished, or you can see bits of it have been removed. It just goes to show that the history that we have been taught is a very, I wouldn't even say sanitized, but a very skewed version of our true past, designed to keep
Yeah.
people under control. And I completely and utterly agree with what you shared.
Yeah, and also because the Romans played a huge part, so essentially, and I interviewed someone for my own podcast on this, and he said, we're essentially Romans carrying iPhones. And it's true, because we still have all, the Roman infrastructures, rules, laws. In fact, you can actually trace these rules, laws, and things back to Babylonia and Sumeria, which is where civilization was supposed to have begun. But this was a new civilization, and a previous civilization had been wiped out for whatever reasons it may be, and this was a restart, a kickstart of civilization, which we can now trace back as being 8,000 years ago. And all you have to do is just you look at these buildings, and these sort of doorways, like around in Saudi, Jordan, there are just thousands of these doorways, or hundreds of these doorways. And when you look at them, you realize that they're incredibly old buildings. Some of them look quite melted. showing that there may have been some sort of like, thermonuclear explosion, or maybe it was a solar flare, all these sorts of things that people have researched these, they're talking about these different things. But what they do look like, they could be millions and millions of years old. And we're told that they're 2,000, 9,000 years old, created by nomads wandering in the desert. There's no way that nomads could have done this, but equally, they could be millions and millions of years old. And I'm just surprised that these historians and archaeologists and anthropologists and things, I'm so surprised that they go along with these lines. I know that they're worried about losing their career. I realize this, but there's been so much suppressed, so much suppressed. Any skeletal remains that look like Homo sapien that come after the time period when we're supposed to have been around are just hidden away, put away in a cabinet somewhere. So there's so much information to come out and so much suppression. And of course, what you're saying about the Tartaria, yeah, I also looked at Tartaria on Google, and I can't believe that those people, those journalists, those people that work for those companies, Bloomberg and Reuters, I can't believe that how can they live them with themselves, putting such lies up, because there is so much information about Tartaria. I mean, there's old maps, there's so much information. Or they really don't do their research properly, and in that case, they shouldn't be journalists, and they're just not researching enough to try and find this, alternative information, and it's all out there, So I just find this crazy. Like, who's paying them, and why is there so much misinformation? Why is all this happening now in the world? And it's because someone doesn't want us to find this information and find out who we really are.
Exactly, because if you think about, what would happen if this information came out. I mean, let's look at a really, really significant example, because I know some people will be watching this, and a part of them will be leaning in and going, kind of sense that's true, but their programmed beliefs will be telling them, this is ridiculous. So if you're still watching, if you're thinking that and you're still watching, thank you for staying tuned. But there's as Elisabeth has already said, there is so much evidence to prove this out there. I mean, Tesla was was not the latest, but certainly one of the most well-known for discovering free energy. When it comes to the ET side of things, for example, this is true all over the world, but one of the most well-known is that the Dogon tribe is it Mali, the Dogon tribe?
They're in Mali now, some of them, they came
they're
from
in Mali now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they've been talking about extraterrestrial beings for thousands and thousands of years, and people thought they were crazy. How could they possibly know all this? But what was really powerful about the Dogon tribe is they were able to pinpoint various bits of the night sky, and most famously, they most famously gave the exact location of a star, one of the Sirius stars, that wasn't actually detectable by science until the 1960s or 70s. And there's tons and tons of written records for hundreds of years before that of them actually stating exactly where it was. So the obvious question is, how could they have known that without the information? The only way they could have known the information is because what they're saying is actually true. And going back to Elisabeth's point. Yeah. And going back to Elisabeth's point earlier about the fact that we're just a tiny fraction of we see just a tiny fraction of the information that's available to us. The obvious, some of you might be thinking, well, so what? What's the point of all this? Well, it's really to help you to reconnect with yourself and realize that you're so much more than a 9 to 5 or trying to build a business or paying taxes. All of us, every single one of us, are pretty much infinite creative beings having a brief human experience. And again, we've had many incarnations on other planets as non-physical beings. And, there's tons and tons of evidence to show this. When you look at near-death experience reports, out-of-body reports, but especially the near-death ones, of which there are literally millions that have been peer-reviewed many, many, many times. and they all describe exactly the same thing: is that when the human body dies, who we truly are doesn't die, because we're infinite and we're immortal. But going back to the energy thing, it's like with our physical senses, we only see 0.0003 of the known energy spectrum. And that's the known energy spectrum. So effectively, we're blind. And going back to the point you made earlier, Elisabeth, about the fact that humanity has been dumbed down genetically, again, there is so much evidence for this, because previous versions, if you like, for want of a better expression, of the human entity were very telepathic, were very able to communicate with animals, with trees, with extraterrestrial beings, with interdimensional energies, because we're all part of what's called a fractal nature of the universe. So, as above, so below. We're interconnected to everyone and everything, and we have the capacity to connect with that. And again, the so what is, well, understanding that and being able to connect with this more expansive energy helps us to understand ourselves better, be better, and live much more in harmony with ourselves, with each other, with the planet, with the environment, and not go down this crazy route of chopping off our own legs, which is what we're doing at the moment. But I just thought that was a really, really important point to make, because we really are so much more than this. Because everybody's had an aha moment where, sorry, not an aha moment, a flow state moment, like when you've held your baby for the first time, or playing sport, or watching a sunset, where your mind completely, your brain, your intellectual thinking completely switches off, and you just experience what it is to be, and you feel connected to everything. I guarantee every single person watching this has experienced that at some point. And that's your little window, that's your little piece of evidence that shows that what we're talking about is absolutely de facto fact. And that there really is, and has been for thousands of years, a huge, huge suppression program that's still ongoing to keep us small. And in terms of where it's going, I'm sure Elisabeth will talk about that further down the line. But yeah, sorry, I just wanted to really
That's
emphasize
great.
that point for people who are struggling to really connect with the
Yeah,
information.
and I can build on that as well and say, that it's also about having a more successful life. So I worked as a business and a life coach, and I've worked with many, many people who I can see are struggling, and it actually causes me physical pain to watch people struggle. And that's why I'm driven, to get all this information out there, because I really want people to just start thriving more in life. But when you start to get back to these intuitive abilities, these sensory abilities, for example, we're all self-healers. When we only have to we just drop into the theta state, or even alpha, but theta state, the more times you can go into the alpha and theta state, the more times your body is able to self-heal. But we're kept in the beta, aren't we? Because we're so busy. We're so busy running from jobs, and then picking up kids, and then helping them with their homework, and doing the washing up, and then, trying to squeeze in a little bit of fun into our lives, that we're out in the external. We never go inside to the alpha and theta brainwaves, but those are the brainwaves that actually heal our bodies. And I also work as an energy healer. But you don't have to be an energy healer to have this. We all are natural psychics, natural energy healers. And even my dentist is an energy healer and intuitive. And what she does is, although she still uses x-rays and everything, she uses her intuition to understand more about intuitively what's wrong with the gums and the teeth. And then she'll use also energy healing alongside other types of pain relief in order to help the body heal, because energy is physical, physical is energy. Well, actually, it's all a hologram, but I won't go into that yet. So we're actually healing, energetically healing the mouth, the gums, whatever it may be, helps it to heal faster. So we all have these abilities. I tell everyone this, and these connecting to subtle energies around us, the sensory abilities that we have. We already know that we have, way more than 5 senses. It's now on, I think, 7 or 8 senses. But I read an article in The Guardian, amazingly, the other day, that was 53 senses. And it's because they're pinpointing different parts of our body. But Where the mainstream is at the moment is they're busy telling us how amazing our bodies are, but it's always body. It's your body. It's your body. It's physical. It's physical. What they haven't decided to tell us yet, because this is in the religious camp, is that we actually it's energy. Our consciousness is our soul. It's flowing through our body. The indigenous tribes talk of the heart is the first organ to be formed in the fetus. And the second that starts beating, the consciousness, the soul comes into the heart and starts to then grow or animate the body. So our physical bodies do not work without spirit. And this is the bit that science is still not there. It's still classed as pseudoscience. Anything that refers to anything that's not physical. But we are going to get there. We are, because there's more and more information coming out. There are many more prominent researchers, scientists who are talking about this stuff, and we're going to get to a saturation point where they can no longer deny it. There's too much
Yeah.
information, they can no longer deny it. And we're getting to that point. And we know we're getting to that point because they're now chucking in a whole load of misinformation, because they're trying to keep
Yeah.
us down for as long as they possibly can. Don't wake up, don't wake up, don't wake up. And they're chucking in the most ridiculous misinformation into the pot. But we're waking up. And there's nothing they can do. The energies of the planet are rising. It's activating our DNA, activating codes, light codes, and we are waking up. We're switching on, and pretty soon they're going to have to even give up with the misinformation. But they haven't yet, which is why it's still very chaotic.
Yeah, I think they will cling on to the bitter end, and I love that you brought that up, Elizabeth, because um, when you look at what's happened in the last 4 years and all the misinformation that was given out at the beginning, and so many people unfortunately put their trust in that, which I can understand. I took a very different opinion, and as did some of the people I know, and got a lot of flack for it at the time. But I knew in my heart and soul that what was being told wasn't right. And fast forward to today, and unfortunately, there are millions and millions of people that are dying or seriously injured from a certain medical intervention that they had in their arms.
Yeah,
Um,
17 million,
that,
17 million.
and that's just the documented
I
cases as
know.
well. And thankfully, or unfortunately, people are now beginning to see that they've been completely lied to. And it's a shame that so many people have had to lose their lives or be seriously and permanently health impaired. But when you look at the silver lining in that awfully dark cloud is the fact that, as you just said, it's really helped people to wake up. And I really want to bring to life what you were saying before about our capacity
Can I just say
to
one
help.
thing? And that
Sure,
is to
please.
anyone that's had the V. There are detox programs you can do. You just have to see an alternative doctor. They can put you on detox programs to detox the spike proteins, the graphene oxide, and you can also use energy healing on your own body. It's not like an overnight thing that works just like that, because it depends on your own belief structures and how many beliefs or limiting beliefs you have that tell you that it's not true. But you can start doing it. You can connect to the energies, connect to source energy. Do a meditation, connect to source energy, and just say, source energy, please remove all of these toxins, pollutants, effects of the V from my body, in the highest and best, safest way for me. Just something like that. It may sound crazy, but what have you got to lose? Just try it and
Yeah.
see. And just keep doing it. Keep doing it until you start to feel better.
Yeah, absolutely. Because people already have an example. Because if you think that that sounds crazy, well, what are the stories that you tell yourself or that we tell ourselves every single day? For example, I'm not good enough. This isn't going to happen. That will never happen to me. Life's difficult. Life's whatever it might be. And what happens is the universe hears that because we are broadcasting and receiving frequencies all the time. The human entity is what's known as a transceiver. We're transmitting and receiving. The universe goes, great, yeah, you want misery? I'll bring you as much of that as you want. There you go. You just until you give me another instruction. So here's the thing. we're constantly programming ourselves without realizing it to receive what we don't want. So conversely, in terms of what Elizabeth just shared, what if instead we decided, you know what, it's a big leap of faith, but again, as you've said, what have I got to lose? I'm going to do that thing, and you will be amazed at what happens. And that's a lovely segue into what I was going to share, which is from a
Yeah, and also
self-healing capacity.
any chronic illness or disease that you have as well.
Yeah.
It works on everything because our bodies, they're self-healing. We don't need to be stuck in disease, illness, sickness. We don't. So anything at all, just ask. Yeah, just ask.
Yeah, because for anyone who's, if you've never come across a guy called Joe Dispenza, have a look at some of the stories. He does these really intense 3, 4 day healing and self connection workshops, and literally hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions, all over the world over the last 10, 15 years, 20 years, or however long he's been doing his workshop now, are having permanent, instantaneous, or very quick spontaneous healings from stage 4 cancer, from terminal illnesses, from things that they've been told by the Western medical profession, you haven't got a chance. Now,
Yeah.
the
He's
Western medical
taking them into the
profession,
gamma because he's taking them into the gamma brainwaves. So if you can get yourself
yeah,
into gamma brainwaves, that's even better. But this takes some serious meditation to get yourself into that. But it's easy to drop into alpha. Alpha is just as soon as you shut your eyes, you're pretty much in alpha. And then theta is just in that lovely period before you're waking up and just as you're falling asleep. So when you're really like
yeah.
starting to just sort of slip into that flow, that's theta.
Yeah, or for anyone who actually does meditate, when you feel that moment where your intellectual thinking, the beta brainwave switches off.
Yeah.
For some people, it can be a 20 seconds, 2 seconds. It might take 30 minutes. I find that it's variable. Like when I meditate like for what half an hour or so most days, but I find that say if I miss a couple of days, it takes a bit longer. But it's that moment where you're just suddenly aware of your awareness has gone from here because your mind's literally like someone's just turned the off key, and your awareness comes down here, not just into your heart space, but it fills out into your whole body. That is the theta state as well, or being in that flow state that we mentioned earlier. But the reason, again, yeah, the reason that people are having all these spontaneous healings in Dispenza's workshop is a perfect illustration of what Elizabeth's just been talking about. And there's a very famous Greg Braden video as well that loads of people have tried to debunk, but it's been proven time and time again by forensic video media people that it's absolutely genuine. There's a lady that has a tumor about the size of a grapefruit. I think it's an ovarian tumor. She's tried regular Western medicine. It hasn't worked. So they spent a few months working with her on her diet, her mindset, her beliefs, and slowly got that to where she was back in her heart space again. And three very skilled practitioners using these higher energetic frequencies through
Yeah.
chanting. You can literally see this in less than 3 minutes. The tumor on the whatever the electrocardiogram I think it is, whatever the image is on the
Yeah.
screen, her tumor literally shrinks, disappears, never comes back again. And this is 100% true. And even on a more everyday level, I've even done this myself. About a couple of years ago, I went for a lovely walk one day, and I really emphasized the lovely walk part of it because I was just in this really lovely, fabulous, connected space. I'd dropped off my vehicle to have like a full valet, which was going to take hours because it was a huge van. So I thought, what can I do? I'll go for a long walk. And there's a disused railway line I went down near Shafton Mallet in the UK, and it was so beautiful. The weather was amazing. I was just in this completely out of my head, in the theta brainwave state that we've talked about, where I just felt connected to everything. My awareness was here, and got to a bit on the path where there was a large family with young kids and double buggies and stuff. And I thought, I'll just stand to one side and let them pass. So I did, and they were like, "Oh, thank you." And just as I leaned back, I nettled my arm in about 6 places. Okay, so they're just nettle stings. But here's the thing. Normally, when you get a nettle sting, it's a couple of hours or so, isn't it? It's just constantly itchy, comes up in the sort of welt. And of course, the more you itch it, the longer it lasts. And something just occurred to me. It's like, yeah, if you think you're a powerful creator, let's see what you're made of. Let's put it to the test. And I was like, yeah, but it wasn't from a place of fear. It was from a place of, yeah, let's try this out. So what I did was I connected with my heart space and I connected with the higher frequential energy that Elizabeth talked about. And I decided to bring in the reality where that had gone as though it had never happened. It was completely healed. And I promise you that within 30 seconds, the welts had gone down, so you couldn't see them. And about a minute later, all the itchiness completely stopped and it went. So that is just such an everyday example. If I can do it, everybody can do it, because it
Everyone can
is
do
so
it.
true. We are multidimensional, energetic beings having this incredible experience, but we've been squashed so much to think that we're just a body, we're just physicality, that when our body dies, that's it, we're done. Nothing could be further from the truth. And again, the relevance of all this is the so what is, well, understanding this, understanding who you truly are, flows out into every area of your life so you can live a more productive, happy, prosperous, connected, loving, and fulfilling and meaningful life in business, in love, with friends, whatever it is you choose to do with your life.
Yes, it does. It just allows you to be the more successful version of yourself. And that's where the suppression has been. Because of course, if we are our best potential, the best version of ourselves, a more successful version of ourselves, how amazing are all of our lives going to be? And how difficult is it going to be to control 8 people on a planet who are all able to change their reality, shift the holographic field so they can experience a different holographic reality. Um, Heal their bodies so we don't have to buy pharmaceutical drugs, the $1 trillion industry that it is. Lose weight, that's another $1 billion, $1 trillion industry, the diet industry. They don't want people to lose weight. They don't want people to heal. They don't want people to get better. They don't want people to, know anything, because then we're not controlled. And they are using us to make money, and have been for, I think possibly even thousands of years, but definitely for 100 years since
Yeah,
the
so
Rothschild, the Rockefellers. But the Rothschild, you can trace them back all the way, all the way back. So I think it's thousands
yeah,
of years.
it is thousands of years, but certainly in the modern era, it was, as people may know, Rockefeller, who's just basically a stooge for the people that control the world. But basically, he went round and basically decided to make pharmaceutical drugs from the byproducts of his petrochemical business, and went round buying up all the natural holistic medicine information that are suppressing it or destroying it,
Debunking
and
it.
start.
He's the one that labeled it alternative medicine. That was the
Yeah,
real medicine. He labeled it alternative medicine. I mean, it's just incredible. How did we fall for all of this? It's just amazing.
yeah, and ironically, he was the one that started the first real cancer charity and cancer schools. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
because
yeah, but
charity
you're the
is
one.
another.
But it's like you're the one that caused all this, because cancer was nothing like as prevalent as it was before you arrived with your petrochemical drugs. Just putting it out there for a minute, because yeah, unfortunately, all that as was intentionally suppressed when they took control of the education system. I
Yeah,
mean, it's not
they,
education; it's indoctrination to produce obedient factory workers. He's very famously quoted as saying, "I don't want thinkers; I want workers." So if you want, because if you want to control people, the last thing you want is to have a populace of people who can actually think for themselves. And how do you do that? You keep people in that beta brainwave state of thinking, doing, thinking, but living in fear, living in fear. If you look at what's going on in the world's media, which is controlled by what, 5 or 6 companies control all of the world's media. And what's going on, that is distraction after distraction after distraction after distraction. The Ukraine war, what's going on in Brazil? Oh, look, Putin and China are going to launch some nukes. Control, it's non-stop. So we're constantly like, we never have enough time to stop and just go,
so
hang
we
on a
never
minute.
go inside ourselves. We never go inside ourselves, and of course that's where the real us lives. We've got the different parts of the mind, the subconscious, the higher mind. We're always in the conscious, but the conscious is only 5%. we only use the conscious, we're only using the conscious 5%. So we're acting from the subconscious 95% of the time, but we never go into the subconscious, from a conscious point of view. So, I mean, I know this is going into limiting beliefs and things, which I didn't want to necessarily go into, but it's understanding more about how the mind works, but also I think connecting to the different parts of our mind. And I think the brainwave activity is a key part of this, but also the subtle energies as well. And we don't quite know, what to call these things, supernatural, paranormal, sensory experiences. I mean, there's all sorts of different names for it, but they're essentially describing the same thing. And I think that we used to be much more part of this multidimensional field. And I think we got sort of shoved down into 3D and just became like we just saw everything as physical. But actually, and the rising energies are now making all of us sort of raise the vibration, if you like. We're moving into a different, a higher density, and we'll be able to now connect back to what we were before we were suppressed and blocked off, from what I call the true human. We haven't been the true human for
Yeah.
quite a few thousand years, but we're going back to our true human form. And I think this is such an exciting time. And if you have children who are born after 2012, they've actually been born into a higher density world already. And many of them already have these abilities that we were told to suppress as children. They have access to them. So if your child is talking about strange stuff, or if they're saying things, or if they've got, like they're sort of forecasting the future, or any of these things, don't shut them down. Listen to them. Just explore it. It's not scary. It's not weird. Just allow them to talk, and also let them talk. If they're talking about past lives, let them talk about past lives, and just ask questions to help, so sort of just to find out more about it and things. We've got to move out of this fear state. We really have, where the Hollywood movies have put us all. This is really important. We have to allow the true human to switch back on. And of course, it's with the children at the moment.
Yeah, and I'm so pleased you brought that up, Elisabeth, because one of the things that popped into my mind as you were speaking there was some people might be watching this and going, "I just feel helpless rather, and maybe hopeless as well. But the whole world is against me. What can I do?" Well, here's the thing: you are more powerful than you realize. Rupert Sheldrake did some incredible work on what he calls the morphogenetic field, which is basically every thought, feeling, idea that you have actually is then projected out into the wider collective human consciousness field. And this has been proven to be true scientifically. There's peer-reviewed science to show this. So don't give up hope thinking you can't do anything, because revolutions begin with one person. Revolutions begin with one person that then becomes a couple of people, 3 people, 5 people, and that has already gained a lot of momentum. The most important thing is to do the work on yourself, with connecting with yourself. And going back to that point about the children that have been born post 2012, it reminded me of a really fabulous point that you made in Work Your Energy, Elisabeth, on page 131. You mentioned downloading creativity and inspiration, because although we've painted a picture that might seem a bit gloom and doom to everyone, what we want to convey here is that it's not about doom and gloom. It's about understanding you have to know where you're at. To be able to go anywhere, you have to know where you're starting from. And the picture that's been painted is to let you know that, yes, we do live in a world of suppression and control, and our human DNA and genetics have been tampered and modified with to suppress us. But that said, remember, we chose to come into these bodies. We chose to come into this world before we incarnated, knowing that we'd have these challenges, because we knew that we can do something about this, because we can lift up humanity, and as is already happening. And on page 131, I loved what you shared there. You said the energy field is filled with creativity, ideas, thoughts, memories, and information. And I absolutely love that, because it speaks to that morphogenetic field, but also the wider field of infinite potential that we're not just connected to, but we're actually a part of. So for anyone who connects with that, tell us a little bit more about what that means and how people can work with that to take the steps and improve that we've been pointing towards throughout this conversation.
Well, it's when you're talking about flow, when we're in that flow state, then we're actually channeling in energy, well, consciousness. And, energy carries consciousness. Consciousness is essentially everything. And within that is creativity. So, one of the things that you may have heard a lot is that we don't come up with ideas, they're not our ideas or our creative thoughts. We're actually channeling them in from the energy field or consciousness, field of consciousness. So when artists are in that flow state, and they're painting, or, when I'm writing my book or something, we're actually channeling in information from the field. And the brain is translating it, receiving it. So it's just to understand that even though we're in a world filled with misinformation and suppression, it doesn't matter, because we are still connected to source energy. We are still pure consciousness ourselves. And the reality of our own life is dependent on the frequency, the vibrational frequency of our own electromagnetic energy field. So that we can do this in two ways, as I talk about in my book. We can raise our vibration through our current emotions. If I say to myself, right, I'm going to be happy, and I start to feel happy. And actually in my book, I kept remembering my wedding day, which was the happiest day of my life. And the more I remembered it, the more I just started to feel happier and happier and happier, because it was changing the neural pathways in my brain. But we can also start to raise our vibration by expanding our consciousness. And this is learning, understanding more, working on our own limiting beliefs, working on self-development, improving ourselves, improving our mind, because this all expands our consciousness. And this is also how we can raise our vibration. And as you rightly said, we can change the world just by sitting in our own sitting room and doing a meditation that visualizes a better world, visualizes a beautiful world where our children are safe, everyone's wandering around in the green fields. The more times you visualize this, the more you're actually going to make it happen. Because as you say, the morphic field, it's energy fields. It's all different energy fields. And that's how we can shift the world and are shifting the world. So we are definitely beating the deep state, cabal, Illuminati, all these people. We are definitely beating them, because we are shifting consciousness ourselves, because more and more people are coming together and becoming more conscious, like conscious creators of reality. And the more we do that, the more we are going to create this better reality that we want to live in. And the deep state, the Illuminati, they know this. They know that all we have to do to change our reality is shift our consciousness. And we're all doing it now. And they don't have a hope anymore. They really don't. Not that they believe that, but they don't.
Yeah, which is why they want to keep us all so separated and distracted all the time, because they know only too well that if we have the time to stop and reconnect with ourselves, that absolutely yes, we are powerful enough to make those realities happen. And I really wanted to emphasize a couple of things you mentioned earlier. For anyone who thinks, this downloading creativity and inspiration, we're already connected to it, it already exists. If that seems too far out for you, I want you to remember that both Einstein, one of the greatest scientific minds that has ever existed, and Tesla, the same, one of the greatest scientific minds that's ever existed, both openly stated that the information that created all this incredible knowledge and wisdom that they shared wasn't coming from them. They both openly have stated that they downloaded it, that they got themselves so quiet that the information just came to them and that they were the conduit for it. And again, everybody has experienced this, because when you've been in flow state, when you've been in moments of peace, when your thinking's disconnected, or you have like a massive aha moment. For most people, as I often say in my coaching work, most people get their best thinking when they're taking a shower at night, walking the dog in the morning, or sat on the beach sipping a cocktail. Why? because their minds have got really quiet and they're much more connected to who and what they truly are, which resides, the sentience and awareness residing around about the heart space area. And then what happens is, what's an aha moment? You're like, oh, you've been trying to think of something for days and days and days, if not weeks. And then when you get quiet enough, your connection to the infinite field of information is strong enough for that to download into your awareness and then pop up into an inspired idea. And we're not bashing the intellectual mind saying that it's terrible and it's awful. We just massively overuse it. We think first and then try and emotionalize it later, which is how we've been conditioned. And it's actually true existence, true human existence is the other way around. Is that we get quiet, we connect to the infinite field automatically because our minds are quiet. We're in flow. We're in those lovely feelings of being in that theta brainwave state. And then we download some incredible information that comes into the heart area first, which has its own intelligence. And I'd love you to speak about that a little bit in a moment, Elisabeth. But we download that into the heart intelligence. That sends a signal up to the brain and creates an inspired thought. And then we take action from that place of inspired thinking. We don't take action from a place of thinking, doing it. But yeah, I'd love you to share what you know about the wisdom of the heart that actually has its own neuronic intelligence.
Yeah, so when they discovered it's got about 40,000 neurons, which are brain cells, and it talks to the brain far more than the brain talks to the heart. But as I said before, consciousness is the heart. So when as the indigenous tribes believe, consciousness comes in when the heart starts beating at 6 weeks old, and that's what then consciousness, if you like, is animating the physical body. So we are consciousness, we are part of that. But also, what you were just saying then? I just lost it. Hang on a second. So I was going to say, oh yes, the first podcast that I did, because I have my own podcast channel, was called "Grow Your Business in 3 Minutes a Day." And it's actually the most downloaded, listened to one, because it's literally just saying, do a visualization. So every morning before you even start working, do a meditation or a visualization or whatever you want to do. And that is going to put you into that flow state. And everything that day is going to be easier to do. The information is going to flow in. The creativity is going to flow in. Your thoughts, you're just going to have like these clarity moments. Everything's going to be like clear. There's going to be no confusion. And so just doing that every single morning is going to be the best thing for you to do to create more success in your own business.
I love that, because what it does, we're working in cooperation instead of against the universe, because again, the universe just brings us everything that we ask it to, good, bad, indifferent. It doesn't judge, it doesn't care. And what we're doing is we're working with the universe. And an expression that I always use in my coaching work, funnily enough, I had a session with a one-to-one client just before we started recording. And at the very end, this was actually exactly our conversation about doing a visualization practice. And an expression that I love using is, let the universe do the heavy lifting. Instead of trying to push water uphill with your bare hands, let it go. Work with the universe and let it flow through you. And one of the most powerful ways to do that is that beautiful visualization exercise that you shared. And I'm not surprised that it's been the most popular download either.
And you got to raise your vibration as well. When I was working as a business coach, one of the biggest problems I found with people is that they would lose that beautiful, like when you first start your business, you're so excited and so happy and you just can't wait, and you are naturally of a high vibration. But then a few years in, people start to feel exhausted and quite jaded, and they start to feel like frustrated. Maybe they get annoyed with their clients for not picking up things quickly enough, or maybe they get annoyed with social media because no one's liking their comments. And they pull themselves into this really like low vibrational place, and they don't even realize that they're doing it. And I always say to them, you've really got to focus. You've got to get back to that joy and passion that you had again. You've really got to find that, and you've got to let all these daily frustrations go, because that's what's pulling them down. So I've always found it's never the startups who have the problem. They're all like, can't wait. It's when they get, like 3, 4, 5 years in, and they just start to get really despondent. Maybe they're not making enough money, and things aren't going in the way they want it to. And that's when I think you need to say to people, stop trying to make it go in your way. Stop trying to control it your way, and keep allowing source energy, consciousness, the universe, whatever you call it, keep allowing it in and allowing it to guide you. And also understand that not everything is your path. Sometimes you have to let things go. You have to be able to know when to change direction. And, we're just so busy trying to control everything ourselves, because that's how we've been taught. That's how society is. It's all trying to control, the weather, nature, all these sorts of things. We need to let life unfold a little bit more, because actually it is an adventure and it's a journey. And if we knew the ending of everything, it wouldn't be nearly as much fun. So we have to find that fun again. And I always say this to people.
Yeah, because it should be fun. You're right, and again, it's just my client and I a couple of hours ago were having this exact conversation. Bring back the fun to what you're doing, because he's actually going through this right now. He's actually at startup phase, but already he's at that point of, oh, what have I done? Oh my goodness! And I have absolutely not a single micron of doubt that he's going to be anything but hugely, hugely successful, because he's doing it for the right reasons. He's got such a powerful why. But understandably, everything that you've just shared is what he's experiencing at the moment. But reconnecting him with that, reconnecting him with this visualization, reconnecting him with this sense of fun and playfulness. Yes, there's a lot of work to do. I don't like using the expression hard work. It's just a personal thing. I don't like the vibration of the word hard. There's a lot of work to do, and we have to be diligent about it. But when you are in that space of fun and joy and happiness, I don't know how many clients that I've worked with over the years, seriously heavy hitters in business, who come in like really intense intellectual energy, and then they leave the session working from the heart. And then I get a message later that day, if it's been a morning session, or the next day if we had an evening session, saying, do you know what, I've just done a 12-hour day on my business. It's felt like about an hour, and I feel like I could work all through the night. I've got 6 times more done than I have in one day than I have in the last 4 days. It's felt fun. I've enjoyed it. And by the way, this huge opportunity just seems to have landed. Is it a coincidence? Absolutely not. It's because the vibration that they're in is working with the universe to do the heavy lifting in exactly the way that you shared earlier. So I love that, Elisabeth.
And I
So
think we
we
need to be
go
more
on.
patient. Yeah, we need to be more patient. So that's another thing.
Yeah.
Things take longer than we think they're going to. And we need to understand that there is no time, so be patient. Impatience is one of the lowest vibrations. So try and be patient.
It's such that has probably been one of the biggest things I've had to work on personally,
Me too.
ever since I really started to work on myself consciously about 15 years ago, when I was about 35. I'm sort of just about to complete my 50-second lap. And although it's much, much better than it used to be, it is something that I seem to keep spiraling around to. I think I've got it handled. Life happens, business happens, and I've sort of come full circle and I'm back to it. But instead of being at it here, I'm looking at it from here. So I still feel the same frustration, but I've got a bit of a wider perspective on it because I've done the work since, and time spirals round. And yeah, I can really, really vouch for how important that is, because what does it do? You're right, it just completely and utterly locks down our connection to the universe. It locks down our connection to creativity, and for all the reasons we've described, it's just really bloody unhelpful. So,
Yeah.
oh, Elisabeth, this has been such a wonderful conversation. I feel like this is just the introduction. So when your new book is out at some point, then I would love to get you back to have a second conversation about that. So I normally end these conversations with three quickfire questions. But before we do that, is there anything that you'd love to share with the Soul Leadership Tribe audience that we haven't touched on yet?
Um, I'm trying to think. Well, we have touched on a lot, and I think I'd just like to say to people, don't give up. Don't give up hope. You will get there. And I sometimes think the reason that things take so long is because the universe is trying to tell us that we're actually allowed to have fun as well. Not everything has to be about our business, that you can actually spend time with your kids. You can go out for walks, you can exercise, you can do something fun for yourself. I mean, not everything is about work. And I know when you're running your own business, because I also run mine, that it really, like, there's always something to do. Always, always, always something to do. But things do take longer than we think that they're going to. And this is because time is a fabrication made by us, first of all. And secondly, because we are supposed to be enjoying life at the same time. This is what I think. So just enjoy yourself as well. And actually, when you're working on your business, it will go much more smoothly because you will have had fun. So you've already raised your vibration, and then you're coming to your work and you're still in that high vibrational place.
Absolutely beautiful. I love that. And ultimately, why for anyone who's in business or even anyone who's employed, why are we doing this? Because it's not just for the money, it's because we want to make an impact, we want to make a difference. And if you are employed, hopefully you're doing something that you enjoy. And if so, it's because you want to make a bigger impact in the world. But especially for people who own their own businesses and are founders or CEOs of their own ventures, that's really, really, really important because that's such a big part. It's that contribution to the wider world, which we can only really fully connect with when we take the space that's required. Because you're so right. There's just I remember my one of my parents saying to me many years ago, it, saying like don't take this the wrong way, and I don't mean it to sound patronizing, but I feel really sorry for your generation because when we were young, when we were your age, life was just so much simpler and there's so much less pressure to perform and do things and have things and be things. And
Mm.
whilst I agree with that to a large degree, but going back to one of the things we said earlier, is that well, we chose to incarnate in these times because we knew that we know that we've come here to help lift the frequency globally and get us back to the true human existence that you've described so beautifully in our conversation. So yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I think
So
souls have come back. Many souls have
yeah,
come back, been here before from Atlantis, Lemuria. They've come back full circle, I think, to do this incarnation to help raise that vibration back to what it was before it was all wiped out 10,000 years ago.
yeah, and for anyone who's wondering what that means, or if you have any curiosity about it, follow a wonderful lady called Sarah Brexman Cosme. She's you'll find her on the internet. She's on Instagram a lot, and she does a lot of Dolores Cannon past life regressions with Dolores's wonderful system. And the amount of people that are coming through who incarnated now, who are saying, who are validating exactly what you've just
Yeah,
shared, Elizabeth,
I've
is
got the same
absolutely
thing.
incredible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I also do quantum hypnosis, the QHHT one, the same one that Sarah does, and I got
Oh,
the
wow.
same thing. So there's so many Atlanteans, Lemurians coming back, and they're quite different from each other. It's very interesting. They're a very different bunch, different group, but it's very interesting talking with them.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's an interesting time. I wish I could convey to people how much fun this world is at this moment in time. Just stop, like, don't watch the TV, don't read the newspapers. Just, I mean, I've got podcasts about Atlantis. I've got blogs about Atlantis as well. There's so much information out there. Look for alternative information, different information, and then you'll see a whole new world open up. And it's just so much more fun. I can't begin to tell you how fun life is now.
Yeah, because at the risk of getting banned, mainstream media is not your friend. The news is not your friend.
No.
the pharmaceutical industry is not your friend. We're being lied to and kept in sick care. But that said, to emphasize what Elizabeth just shared, if you actually find decent sources of information that speak more truth and more wisdom, then you have that capacity to really enjoy life a lot more. And I know it's something I get bogged down in from time to time. So it's as much a great reminder for me as anything else.
Yeah. So, oh, I forgot what I was going to say. Okay, it's gone. It's gone. Sorry. It might come back.
Okay, if it comes back, jump in. So we're going to finish with the quick fire closes, and if that comes back to you as we're doing that, just feel free to share. So I asked this of all my guests, three closes. What are you most excited about right now, Elisabeth?
Oh, my second book coming out. I can't wait. There's so much stuff. There's so much more about the Dogon tribe that you didn't mention. I was thinking, should I mention it? I thought, no, wait till my book. We can talk about that next time when you've read it. And
Wow.
yeah, I can't wait. It's just all this information. What I like to do with my books is paint pictures to like cheer people up, teach them things. It's all about raising the vibration. So the intention I set for my books is to help raise the vibration of humanity, help people to live better lives, and help to expand their consciousness. And this one is more of that, but it's deep diving into our ancient history as well, which is interesting.
And as much as we've talked about patience and not having too many expectations, that said, when are you hoping to release the book?
Well, I was hoping it was going to be the end of this month, but I've now got to do some more research on it, which is fine. So probably July, August. It will be in the summer sometime.
Oh, fantastic! I'm really looking forward to that. So I will grab myself a copy as soon as it's available. So the second question, I love this is probably my favorite one. Imagine that you've just jumped into a time machine. It fires up. You feel yourself being taken to another point in the past on your timeline. And then as the door opens, you are met by 12-year-old you. What two pieces of advice would you give that young girl and why?
Um, well, first of all, I tell her to trust herself more because I have very strong intuitive knowing, which is claircognizance. And actually, this is the ability that we all have. We all have very strong claircognizance, and it's the first psychic ability that most people like connect to. But we've been told not to trust ourselves, so we block ourselves. But actually, we're still very connected. So when you feel like you know something, but you can't evidence it or explain it or prove it, trust that. That's your claircognizance, your intuitive abilities. And I would say trust that because this is a really strong part of me, which I now trust and I follow all the time. Even yesterday, someone was telling me not to do something, and the little voice in my head was saying, "No, I need to do that." And I did it, and then I then got the result that I wanted, and the other person had told me I wouldn't have got that result, but I did get it. So I trusted myself, and I ignored what they said. So I would tell her that. And secondly, I would say to her, don't focus so much, on marriage and babies and, all that relationship side. Focus more on your career and you and self-identity, who you are, get yourself out there. And all of that will just work itself out. I think we're programmed from a very young age for all this romance, all this, like marriage, babies, romance, soulmates, which is another $1 trillion industry, the soulmate one, twin flames, all these sorts of things. And I think it's wrong. It's not right for women and for girls. They need to focus on themselves, their own identity, their career, a career of their choice, not what their parents want, but what they want to do, their own life. And all the romance side will work itself out. I think I would
Yeah,
say that,
beautiful.
those two things.
Yeah, such sage advice. And finally, I mean, we've pretty much touched on this final question all the way through this conversation. But if you were to distill it down into one thing, what do you feel is most wrong with the world right now, and what one thing would you do to solve it?
Well, yeah, I think what is wrong with the world now is all the misinformation. I think that this is really debilitating for people because nobody knows which direction to go in, what to trust, where to look. And I think what that is teaching me is that we need to trust ourselves, because when you trust yourself, you actually get very strong discernment and knowing, as I said before. And when you have that, you can find your way through all this misinformation, because truth, believe it or not, vibrates at a frequency that our body recognizes. So we know truth, and we've been taught what truth is, history and all these sorts of things, but we know sort of that it's not. So we recognize that the frequency of truth, so we will know our truth when we find it. And we have different levels of truth, because the more we expand our consciousness, we switch on more DNA, which probably even holds all of our memories, because it's a storage system. And we are able to then connect to more of our epigenetic memories and then more of our truth. We've lived for millions and millions and millions of years, our consciousness, souls, everything. So we know what's happened in our past. We know what's going on. We know what's misinformation and what's not. But we have to really trust ourselves and be okay to go against the mainstream, be okay to go against our families and friends, be okay to just sit in our own knowing, our own knowledge, and know that this is right for me. And remember that we're all on our own journey. So what's right for me may be not right for someone else. We are all on our own unique journey, because this is how consciousness learns. It learns through us. If we're all having the same experience, it wouldn't learn very much. So we're all having different experiences as well.
Yeah. Elisabeth, what a wonderful conversation, and that's such a beautiful point to end on, to basically learn to trust ourselves and our intuition.
Yeah.
I love that. So thank you ever so much for coming back and doing this again. It's been such a wonderful conversation, and I really cannot wait to get you back for a second round when the book's actually launched in the very near future. So yeah, thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with the Soul Leadership Tribe audience.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I hope it's helpful.
Yeah, most definitely. That's wonderful. Okay, we'll see you soon. To everybody else who's still here, thank you ever so much for staying right till the end. As usual, please like, comment, share. Helps the algorithm to send it to more people who could be interested. Makes us all really, really popular, brings eyes onto the screen, but most importantly, it gets this wonderful wisdom out into the world that brilliant guests like Elisabeth are sharing with us. So thank you again, and tune in next time, and we'll see you soon.